The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by Rams on Demand, Seat Giant, Vibe 305, and RWO, Rams World Order. Now enjoy the show.
Down the middle to the end zone. Whoa. Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows.
It picks. Nickel Roby Coleman throws.
End zone caught. Touchdown. Tyler Higbee. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. LaMarcus Joyner returns to the lineup with an interception in London. 35-30. Robert Woods, first down 20. 10-5. Touchdown. LA! No, it's Goff who keeps it. And Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Met immediately and sacked. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack. He's decked by Ebukam. Picked off. Marcus Peters. Strutting his stuff. Mark Barron the last 4 weeks has been a Pro Bowler. He picked off Dak Prescott into Seattle territory, into the clear. 30, 20, Farrell Cooper 10. Farrell Cooper at the goal line.
Cousins sacked. Indomitian Sue. Of all the guys, it's the rookie John Franklin Myers who knocks it out of Cousins' right hand.
Todd Gurley, 20, 10. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown, LA!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. This is episode 155. It's a special live draft special. It's a roundtable. It's me. It's our newly joined Alexis Kraft, and joining us, who hasn't been on the podcast for a while, but he's back, Alex Kelly. How's it going, you two? Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's going great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. Downtown Rams live. These live podcasts are awesome. I love doing them. And around draft time, I think things get a little less hectic, so it's easier to work around everyone's schedules. And there's not a deadline because we don't have a game coming up, Sunday or Thursday or Monday. So it's great to have you guys on, and we'll be doing this throughout the off season. So you guys that are listening definitely have to tune in for that. But Alex, take us away, because we're going to be doing a roundtable. We're going to have 8 to 10 prospects, and we're going to basically have a show and tell base where we're going to tell you each about a prospect we like and talk about it in detail, have a little banter, and you guys get to know some of these players. So Alex, you're up.
All right, so with my first prospect, I have Dexter Lawrence, a nose tackle out of Clemson. And the Rams would have to target him with the 31st overall pick or trade up. He could fall to his failed drug test that made him miss the college football playoff. The Rams could draft him and replace Ndamukong Suh, who they would have to pay $13-14 million again, unless he's going to take a huge pay cut. He was a prospect that was banged out for most of the 2017 season, but he saw a lot of improvement in 2018. What do you all think?
I like Dexter Lawrence a lot, actually. I think he could fall to 31 too. He shouldn't, but I think he will.
What about you, Jake?
Yeah, so obviously that whole failed drug test, a lot of teams would be turned off by that, but I know the Rams general manager Les Snead has not been afraid to take a chance on a guy with a red flag in the past. So I do think that would be an option. Looking at Michael Brockers, obviously he's a potential cap casualty. You talk about saving $10 million, and you have to pay Jared Goff eventually. You have to pay Marcus Peters, those guys. So that could be an option, as well as Ndamukong Suh if he's not brought back. The Rams do really like John Franklin Myers, who will play next to Aaron Donald. But aside from that, they could use another guy, and Dexter Lawrence wouldn't be a bad option. So I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but stranger things have happened in the draft. And remember Laramie Tunsil? Everyone thought he was going to go top 5. That whole drug thing comes out night of the draft. He falls to the Dolphins and the teens. So maybe something like that could happen. Not wishing that on anybody, but I do think that's something that could happen. So my guy that I really like, and I would like the Rams to draft 31st overall, is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson of Florida. You talk about a junior that has only gotten better every year he's been in college. 5'11", 207. This is somebody that I like because you see a lot of LaMarcus Joyner in him, and I know a lot of people will be like, whoa, like, nope, we're replacing Joyner, all that. And look, I get it, but hold on. He's 5'11", not 5'8". I think his ball skills are tremendous. I think he's got great range. He's going to have some consistency issues in man coverage. I think that's something that he's continued to get better with over the course of his playing career at Florida. Florida's become a DBU type of program. That's one of them out there. So, that's a place that I would expect, guys that are coached at that level. I think he brings a lot to the table. I love his range. He's very fluid, and I think he's got a great, he has a great back pedal. I think he's just really quick, to turn around, fluid hips, can keep up with anybody. He's got great speed. I expect him to run well at the combine. He needs to get better as a tackler, but I think he's good enough right now to start in the NFL. I don't think he's a liability, and I think the Rams would love to have him. So, what's your guys' take on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
Yeah, so I think safety is a big need in the first round. I thought you were going to say Nasir Adderley from Delaware. Can you compare him to this other guy you're talking about?
Yeah, so with Nasir Adderley, you're talking about somebody that's not as filled out. He's not as big. He's very skinny. I was able to interview him post game at the Senior Bowl. And I'll tell you right now, this is the best safety in the draft. I don't think he's in the Rams' range, and I don't think they're a team that's going to go up and trade for, all the way up to like a huge pick to trade to get a safety. If they're going to go that route, if they're looking for a luxury, they're going to go and they're going to get somebody like, a Clinton Dixon for agency, or an Earl Thomas, or maybe even a Tyrann Mathieu. They're not going to trade up and draft Nasir Adderley. And Adderley is awesome. So, like, if they were to do that, they would reap the benefits. I mean, this is somebody that, plays with his hair on fire. He's got great range. And, I mean, he comes from Delaware, so you were kind of hoping, like, no one knows who he is, small school guy. Rams seem to find those guys at the Senior Bowl. This is not the case. Nasir Adderley is the top safety in this draft, per my opinion, and I think he's going to go top 15, unfortunately, because I really liked him at that slot. And I'm glad you brought him up, because I know I got a lot of Rams fans wild and happy for Nasir Adderley, to the point where they were like literally DMing me during the Senior Bowl, like, oh, there's Adderley making another play. But, unfortunately, I just don't see him being a realistic option because how high his stock has gone up.
I like Gardner-Johnson. I actually kind of have him going the second round. I have him as the third highest rated safety in the draft behind Adderley and Deontay Thompson out of Alabama. I know that a lot of people disagree, though, and actually have Gardner-Johnson as one of the top safeties in the draft, maybe even before Adderley. I was talking to a guy the other day who was a big Florida fan and really likes Gardner-Johnson, but I don't know, if I see the Rams taking a safety round one or not.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll do it. I think he might be one of the better players available, and I think that's somebody that you can justify because this is year 3 in Wade Phillips' scheme, and you're going to start to find that, that continuity and find the guys that work. Right now, this is year 2. They just lost in the Super Bowl. They'll be back, no question. And this defense just played it was one of the best defensive performances I've seen. And they still have room to improve. Just think about that. So, obviously, Gardner-Johnson might not be, the number one guy at that position, but I definitely could see him being a pick. He's not my favorite player in this class, but he's definitely one of them. But Alexis, who's your player?
So my player is Mack Wilson, the linebacker out of Alabama, and he's actually somebody who I think could potentially, talent-wise, be a top 15 pick, and I think he's the second linebacker in the draft behind Devin White out of LSU. And he's someone who I think plays best at the middle linebacking position, but I also think that he can be used in an outside linebacking position, possibly an edge rush. And I think the Rams could use him in either position, preferably in the middle. I'd like to see him in the middle. But I mean, he was one of the fastest linebackers in college football last season. And I think that was attributed largely to his quick hands and quickness off the snap. He's not the biggest linebacker you're going to see, but because of his size, he's so fast. And I could see him falling to 31. And I think if he's there, the Rams should take him.
Yeah, I mean, I would take it. Alabama has developed some great linebackers in recent memory. C.J. Mosley, Reuben Foster. So I'd be happy with Wilson.
Yeah, I think it's funny you bring that up because, Mack Wilson, obviously Alabama. C.J. Mosley is a player that I think the Rams should consider in free agency. A lot of people don't think Corey Littleton is the fit there. It's a new age linebacker league, and I get that, but I do really like Corey Littleton in that role. And I do feel like somebody like Mack Wilson can step right in. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Rashaan Evans. I don't know if he'll fall as far as Rashaan Evans did. To me, I thought Rashaan Evans, and I know Alex disagrees, but I thought Rashaan Evans was close to top 10 player.
Hey, he had a great year. Yeah. I'll give it to him.
So I think Alabama, they're kind of the linebacker factory, the defensive factory, and I don't think that'd be a bad pickup at all if he was there. It's just a matter, of course, if he can fall that far because he's a very talented player.
Right, exactly.
And another guy you liked, Sean Dion Hamilton, was out of Alabama too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Knee injuries hurt him, but I compared him to Thomas Davis. I think if he stays healthy, he'll be something special. But Alex, who's your player you want to talk about?
All right, I'm gonna keep on going with the Clemson players since that's where I go to college. And my second one, and let me clarify. I'm not going to talk about every Clemson player. I'm just going to comment on the Clemson players that I could see with the Rams. So no Hunter Renfrow, even though that'd be pretty cool. He's going to the Patriots.
Yeah,
but Austin Bryant. I'm gonna go over Austin Bryant, edge rusher. He's exclusively a pass rusher. He needs help in the run game. He could possibly fall to the third round, I think. He's a very explosive player. Had an interception last year. I was right there when it happened, and I think that would be a good pick for the Rams in the third round. There was some talk in the preseason that Clemson could possibly have 4 first-rounders on that defensive line, but I think Bryant's going to fall a little bit. So what do you guys think about him?
I have him ranked in probably the lower end of the second round, but I do like him a lot. You're not going to like this. I didn't watch a ton of Clemson this season, so I can't give a lot of insight into him. But from what I've seen and what I've read, people are really high on him.
Hey, we're on TV every week.
That's true.
It's all good.
Yeah, I like him. I've actually seen him earlier in the year, or maybe last year. Might have been last year. He was mocked to the Rams in the first round, and I see him as a pass rushing specialist. And like you said, he needs to get better in the run game for sure, which is going to hurt your value, which also is going to make you, extremely valuable if you're a team that's looking for that one area. For instance, I know the injuries kind of led to it, but, talk about getting a guy like Carl Lawson in the 4th round. And that's something like that, where he's obviously somebody that didn't have the all-around game, but, the pass rushing ability that he displayed was quite honestly, among the best in the league. And, I think even though he was a 4th rounder, you're getting a starting caliber player if that's all you're looking for is, a pass rusher. So, with that being said, I have to bring up my guy that is probably not, well, I won't say he's probably not going to be there because he hasn't participated in the combine yet. But TJ Hawkinson, if you don't know his name now,
that's your guy.
I don't know what else to say. I was slamming the table, every table that there could be slammed I was slamming it for George Kittle. Downtown Rams, I got everybody on board about George Kittle. He goes in the 5th round to the 49ers, and I don't have any logical explanation as to why. This is somebody, TJ Hawkinson, who is getting... he's not underrated because I am starting to see the praise, but people still feel as though he's the second best tight end on his team. He's my number 1 tight end in the class. Him, and then I have Dawson Knox out of Ole Miss, number 2. When you look at TJ Hawkinson, obviously, the physical ability, being 6'5", that might have been what pushed Kittle down the board since he wasn't as tall. I believe he's 6'2", but he ran the 4.5s, which is insane. If Hawk runs a 4.6, I'll be thoroughly I'm already impressed as it is. If he runs a 4.6, that's great. If he runs a 4.5, he could have Eric Ebron level hype going into the draft. This is somebody that is an all-around game changer at the tight end position. He can block better than anybody in college right now as a tight end. You can line him up out wide. You can line him up as an H-back. You can put him in as an inline tight end. He's got the physicality to get off the line of scrimmage, and really his speed, while he doesn't look like he's moving that fast, no one else is keeping up with him. His balance is unreal. I've seen this guy on film break multiple tackles, including a highlight reel play. I forget who it was against, but he got hit twice on his side, and he looked like he was about to go out of bounds, and he held on to his balance and put his hand on the ground and basically held himself up, ran all the way down the sideline. He's got some unbelievable balance. He's very athletic, can make all the catches. Red zone target, if he can't get it going for some reason in the NFL, but I thoroughly expect this guy to be a top 5 receiver, top 5 tight end at the next level, all around tight end. So, what are you guys' thoughts on TJ Hawkinson?
Well, I love Hawkinson. Don't get me wrong. I think he's incredible, and I totally agree with everything you said. But you see the Rams taking him even with Higbee and Everett?
So I actually do. And the reason I say that is, the Rams weren't afraid to go tight end in the 2nd round, with Gerald Everett. And that was a big gamble. You're talking, you're throwing, your pick, your number, your first pick, because you didn't have a first rounder. You're throwing it at a guy who played at UAB and South Alabama. It's no knock against those schools, but, smaller competition. He's a little, I don't want to call him undersized, but he's a little undersized, I guess, for the stereotypical 6'5", 6'6" tight end build that you're looking for. And, I didn't have him as the best on my board when he was selected. So I liked him a lot, but he didn't run as fast as I expected him to either. And, they made that pick in the 2nd round. That was huge. With Tyler Higbee, that contract will be coming up soon. This was year 3, kind of put up or shut up in year 3 for tight ends. And, I thought he put up and showed us exactly what he is. And he's not a game-changing tight end. He's a guy that can be in a rotation. So now you look at the 3rd option. And you look and you see, Johnny Munt from Oregon, the UDFA that has had his fair share of injury issues in the past. But, in the NFL, it's kind of checked out well. I don't see him really as moving the needle. So you could, sacrifice a Johnny Munt and move, Higbee to kind of a blocking guy, and then really have Everett and Hawk. If Hawk falls to 31, I don't know how you pass on him. It's that simple, So
yeah, that's interesting. I kind of like it though. I never considered that, but I would honestly take Hawkinson over Higbee, I think. But yeah,
I'd take him over Everett. Hopefully the Rams fans don't shoot me for that, but I love Everett, don't get me wrong, but Hawk is, you don't find guys that have the size, have the speed, and are able to do everything as well as TJ Hawkinson is.
Yeah, this tight end class is great. You have Irv Smith from Alabama too, and Noah Fant from Iowa, your 2nd tight end out of Iowa. And the Rams were rumored to trade, or they were rumored to thinking about trading Tyler Higbee earlier in the season. The Vikings offered a 7th round pick, and the Rams wanted a 6th round pick. And all in all, the trade didn't go through. And even Todd McShay has Irv Smith, the tight end from Alabama, going to the Rams in the first round in his latest mock draft. So Hawkinson to the Rams at 31 would make sense to me. Now, I don't think tight end's the biggest need. It's probably like the fifth biggest need after safety, linebacker, defensive lineman, like the nose tackle, and maybe a replacement for Brockers. But Hawkinson's a great player. He can catch, he can block, he can do it all. And that's what you need to do to be a tight end in the NFL nowadays.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Alexis, who's your player?
So the next guy that I have is Montez Sweat, the edge rusher out of Mississippi State. And he's someone who I think will be there at 31. And I think if he is there, I would like to see the Rams take him because that edge position was kind of our weakness the entire season. I mean, Dante Fowler came in, but we don't know if he's coming back or not. And so I think Montez Sweat is well, first off, physically, he's insane. I mean, he's 6'6" and he's 245 pounds, but he moves like he weighs way less than that. And he has really long arms. He's super scary coming off of that edge position. And I think he'd be a really great fit into the Rams defense. The only concern that I had with him is I think he's strictly an edge guy. I don't really think you can do much more with him because he doesn't do well in the open field. But I really like him, and I watched a lot of tape on him, and I think he's an absolute stud. So I could easily see the Rams taking him if he's there at 31.
Yeah, so going into the season, there's always that player that you're like, oh, I want the Rams to get. And I think Montez Sweat was that guy for me. After watching him play in the bowl game versus Louisville, he was all over Lamar Jackson. He hit him a whole bunch of times. Gonna rub that in for you, Jake, because you loved Lamar Jackson. But Montez Sweat, he had a great Senior Bowl week. There was a lot of hype. It's a deep edge class, so I can see him falling to 31. I can also see him going as high as the 15 range. It just depends on how quick they go off the board. He could be even a trade-up candidate for the Rams. Hey, I think he's the real deal. I would love to have him either we draft him at 31 or trade up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a very safe pick. I think he's a guy that would contribute right away, and I don't see any risks with taking him at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. As long as he's there, he's an option. I think that's really the best way to look at it. This is somebody that I expect to do a lot for his draft stock, come the NFL Combine. I think Sweat, this is the guy that I had the Rams drafting, in the way too early mock draft I did right after last year's draft. I thought, great fit, like you said, Alexis. This is somebody you could put right there, and you're going to get a starter out of him. He's not. I don't think he has most bust potential. I think it's more so, how large is his ceiling. I think because, like you said, he doesn't do a ton of things. He really just is a pass rusher, but he's a good one. And I saw, being up close and personal, I know you guys probably saw on NFL Network. I watched the thing in person when he pushed Titus Howard from, I believe it was Alabama State. He just shoved him to the ground. There was just total reckless abandon. Seeing that type of force in person is just unreal. And, he was tested. But I thought if there was a winner throughout the entire Senior Bowl, Montez Sweat had to be one or two, at the top for that. So I think that's a good pick. That's all I have to say to that. But Alex, who's your next player?
Yeah, so my next player is Mark Fields, a cornerback from Clemson. My last Clemson
That's my guy.
prospect that I'm going to talk about. Yeah, it is your guy. He had a great college football playoff, couple the two games, and he had a great Senior Bowl. And he's got a nastiness about him. And according to my one source, Jake Ellenbogen, the Rams have talked to him a few times.
Yeah, he said, quote unquote, a lot of times he's met with them. So, Mark Fields, he played for, I believe he was on the Rams Super Bowl team with Tommy Polley, linebacker, his father. So, that you got the bloodline there for the Rams. I think he's somebody because the questionable off-field concerns that will arise, like why did he not play as much, I think teams over-evaluate that. And I think because of that, you could see something where, he falls to the 4th, 5th, or even 6th round. And at that point, that's really where the Rams have made their money over the years with Les Snead, finding those value guys. I would definitely expect them to consider Mark Fields, towards the end of the draft. I think he would be a huge fit. And I think, when you have guys like Troy Hill and Sam Shields up for free agency, I think he'd fit right in there and kind of learn and grow under, tutelage of, Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters. So I would like the pick for sure. I think it's a good name that you mentioned there. Probably off my list, but but yeah, good minds think alike, and I'm a really big fan of Mark Fields II. So sorry, you were saying?
Well, I was gonna say that of all the Clemson players that I have watched and made note of, I actually do know a little bit about Mark Fields, and I do like him actually a lot in like that 4th, 5th round area. But I don't know anything about his off the field stuff, like you said. But from what I've seen, I actually do like him a lot. Wouldn't be mad if we took him.
Well, I was watching a Clemson live stream when they were doing media stuff, and they were giving the phone to the players on Instagram Live, and they asked them who the funniest player on the team was, and I believe it was Trayvon Mullen answered Mark Fields. So, hey, he might have a sense of humor. So,
I mean, I wasn't there. We can't really speak on something that we don't know of. It's just something that I heard that, around the draft sphere, I guess, that, it's a little bit concerning that he didn't play as much, his relationship with Dabo and Coach Venables. So, that's something out there. I spoke to him. He seemed extremely humble. Had him on the podcast, that interview post-game, and just seemed like a guy that could definitely step in right away and contribute, at least on special teams to start and eventually develop into a corner, for the long haul. But, moving on, my next player is going to be another guy that I met with at the Senior Bowl that confirmed to me that the Rams were, in fact, they met with him and they were interested in him, and that's Tyree Jackson of Buffalo. It may sound a little biased because I'm in New York, and I know a lot of people think I live right by Buffalo, but I hate to tell you, I'm like 5-6 hours away from there.
I live an hour from Buffalo. I'm closer to Buffalo than you are.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Tyree Jackson, he is going to get knocked for being too tall because people are going to look, oh, what's the last time a 6'7" quarterback made in the NFL? You have Brock Osweiler. You have Mike Glennon. So he's going to be like compared to those guys. But the fact of the matter is this. When you have somebody that size, can move that well, and when you look at his physical arm talent, and just like, I think overall he's got a quarterback mentality. It's kind of like in baseball. You never want a catcher that doesn't have a catcher's mentality. You have to be the quarterback of the field, in baseball. Well, in football, you have to be the quarterback to be the quarterback. And, Tyree Jackson is that guy. I think he's very capable of doing that. Speaking with him, he's somebody that knows what he's doing. He doesn't come off like, an idiot or somebody that didn't work hard enough to, earn anything. I think he's going to work really hard each day and make it in the NFL. I think he's the candidate, guys, where if you had to pick one player that if they hit, they're the best in the draft, it has to be Tyree Jackson. Because if his potential is met, he will be the best player in this draft. He's kind of Mahomes-like, but I like to compare him to Cam Newton based off his physical attributes. I think he plays more like Cam Newton. He's got that rocket arm. It's the best arm in the draft. I don't think anybody could tell me otherwise. Deep ball I think it's great. He's got to develop a little bit more, not even touch, because that's the crazy thing. Normally you see these deep ball guys in college and they're missing something where, it's they throw one speed or, they're too late. With his, it's just consistency placing the football. Obviously, he's extremely mobile. I love his pocket presence and awareness. He throws with anticipation, which there are probably 3 to 4 guys in this draft that I've ever seen on film throw with anticipation. That worries me, for the overall class. He can throw the ball, off platform, which I like. I don't know if you guys have watched him, but the one throw that like constantly just speaks to me is his throw against Rutgers. And I get it. I know Rutgers isn't that great, but he's throwing off his back foot, or he's throwing against his body, and he throws a laser. I mean, like 50 yards in the air, perfect placement and everything. And it just kind of showcases, the type of player he really is. Again, sky's the limit with potential. Obviously, this is somebody that is not going first round because of how many things that he doesn't have or he's weak in, mechanically flawed. His footwork definitely needs work, but I think this is somebody that's definitely going to turn heads if he ever meets his potential. I think he's very coachable, and there's no reason to say that he won't meet that just based on all my evaluating and, looking at what he truly is. But what's your guys' take on him?
Well, he had a really weird year, if I remember correctly, because you had him as your preseason number 1 quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
and his year was up and down, and then at the end of the year, there was news that he wanted to transfer, and then he declared for the NFL draft.
Which he told me he never wanted to transfer, so I thought that was interesting. It might have been something that was put out there.
They went to the Senior Bowl and had a good week from what I heard. I didn't get to watch much of the Senior Bowl this year because I have a class in that slot where the practices were, but yeah, I think the Rams will draft a quarterback in this draft. I'll talk about my quarterback on this list a little bit later when the time comes, but I think the Rams are out on Sean Mannion. I think Sean Mannion played his last game as a Ram.
I agree with that. As far as Tyree Jackson goes, he's all right. He actually kind of reminds me a lot of I agree with the Cam Newton comparison, or kind of like a Terrell Pryor to me. But also, I mean, obviously, like you said, he's got probably the best arm strength in the draft. I do kind of see how he's like Mahomes with the playmaking ability and stuff. But the only thing that kind of concerns me about Jackson is he did have a high number of interceptions this past season. And I think, he's just super unpolished. But I do have him going in the second round. I actually think one of the teams that, if I had to bet he ends up on, I actually think it's going to be the Bengals. And I was on a podcast last week with a guy who's a Bengals fan, and apparently they really want him. But I don't know if that's true or not. But I don't know. I mean, he's all right. I don't know if I'm that big of a Tyree Jackson fan, though.
It's funny. I have him as a second round grade too. I think that's really where he'll end up going. It just takes one team to, make the selection. And, when you're looking at all the other guys and you're like, well, what separates this guy from the next? I think, Tyree Jackson, one of my biggest things, and I'll bring this up and it'll probably piss Alex off, but he knows I was not a huge fan of Deshaun Watson at all. I didn't understand the hype. I didn't see anything on film to tell me that he was going to make it in the NFL. I thought he should probably play running back. But here's why I missed on that. I was missing one key thing. It was his coachability. This is somebody that I thought had awful mechanics, and then he goes to Bill O'Brien's offense with the Houston Texans, and he just turns it around. And he looked night and day a different quarterback. I'm sure, Alex, you can agree. He didn't look like that at Clemson. He's definitely, changed the way he throws the football. His motion's different. His footwork's better. He still has to improve a little bit, but that's what I'm talking about. Is you're looking at a quarterback, as long as they're coachable and have tools. I trust the NFL coaches as long as he goes to the right situation, because we've seen this go backwards. I trust the coaches to make it happen. So I'm a big believer in Tyree Jackson. I could crash and burn on this, but yeah, I think second round grade, like you said, I think that's a good spot. Who would be your next player?
Okay, so the next guy that I have is someone that we would definitely have to trade up for, potentially trade into the top 5 to 10 position, which I don't see us doing, but we can dream. It's Rashawn Gary, the edge rusher out of Michigan, and obviously probably going to go top 5, top 10 pick in the draft. I actually did a Twitter mock draft a couple weeks ago where I traded up to 20 to grab Gary, and I thought that was super unrealistic that he was available at 20. But I mean, this is a guy who athletically is insane. He's 6'4", he's 280 pounds, he's a huge hitter, really, really kind of like a violent player. Some people don't like him because they think he's not consistent and he needs to be polished. But I think he's a guy that, again, Wade Phillips would love and would bring out his potential. And I actually see him playing, I should have stated earlier, on the edge rush. A lot of people on Twitter, when I took him in the Twitter mock, were mad because they see him as kind of like an inside guy. But I mean, again, we don't know if we're going to get Sue back. We don't know if we're going to get Fowler back. And I think he could fill in for either of those guys. And I think him along with Aaron Donald would just be absolutely scary. And I'd love to see us get him. But we would for sure have to trade up for him.
Yeah, the thing about Gary that I've been seeing is that teams don't know where they're going to play him. And I think he can go as high as the Raiders because he seems like a Raiders pick to me. You don't really know what they're going to do. And the one team that really makes sense to me for Rashawn Gary is the Seattle Seahawks. They've always taken in the first round that pick. You don't know why they took him,
Right.
And you don't know if they took a player if they just like his athletic ability or even if they don't know where he's going to play on the field. And I just think he's going to go to the Seahawks, but he could come back. He'd come to the Rams, replace. I think he'd probably fit where Brockers is playing right now. And if we let Sue walk, move Brockers to nose tackle, maybe. I'm not really sure. And Gary could play the 5 tech.
I actually have him going to the Raiders too.
Yeah, that seems like a Raiders thing, or a Seahawks. I think he's going to go with one of the two teams.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look out for. He is somebody that reminds me a lot, not necessarily his play, but he reminds me a lot of Chris Jones from the Kansas City Chiefs. And the reason for that is because I felt like his stock was everywhere. Like, I felt like teams had him in the top 10, and then I turn around and they're like, oh, he's a top 40 player. And it's kind of what I'm seeing with Gary. I'm glad you brought up Alexis because it's like you have him really high. Alex, you seem to have him pretty high. I have him kind of in the middle of the first round. I don't see him as a second-round pick, but it seems like this is one of those prospects, like a Chris Jones, that no one seems to really make their mind up on. It's, you have half of the draft, Twitter and just social media and just the draft nicks in general, believing he's early first and, early to mid first. And then you have half of them saying, excuse me, he's like late first, early second. So, that's the weird thing here. I like him. I think the Rams, they're definitely going to get an interior presence. They're going to get an edge guy. They're going to get interior presence. I don't know if they'll go this early for an edge guy. I also don't know if, who's to say they wouldn't play Gary inside, next to Donald, have to play him. I don't know what they would do. Maybe move him around. I just think when you have, that athleticism and that, ability, you can kind of throw a guy around everywhere. I mean, look at what they did with John Franklin Myers. You're talking about somebody that no one knew about, goes in the 4th round, this diamond in the rough. I just think somebody like that where, he's athletic enough to play as a linebacker, in 2 to 3, I'd say 2 down. He'd be a 2 down outside linebacker. And then you can kind of bring him in as, interior pass rusher. You can kind of, play him at defensive end or defensive tackle. He might be somebody like that. I'm not saying he is John Franklin Myers. Maybe his ceiling is higher, although I think, JFM has a huge ceiling that people are going to realize. But he could be kind of like that player. And when you have those two guys with a Donald, and then say, you get rid of Brockers and Sue, you kind of add more athleticism and more versatility to that defensive line that you maybe didn't have the year prior.
Right. I mean, that's Gary's biggest strength. I mean, in my opinion, is just his versatility. I truly think he could probably play in multiple positions.
No, I would agree with that. Alex, your next guy.
My next guy. So my next guy is another Michigan product, and that is linebacker Devin Bush. I see him going at the end of the first round, maybe early second. I think he shows great instincts, and I think the Rams are going to move on from Mark Barron to save $6 million in cap room. He's a little undersized at 5'11", and before this past season, he weighed only 225 pounds. He gained another 15 pounds. And he's a little undersized, but every time I say undersized, I think of Aaron Donald. So he could be a great pick at 31. And I think some big name mocked him to the Rams at 31. I forgot who it was, though.
Interesting. I know who it was. It was my buddy Kyle Krabs from the Draft Network.
Hey, Kyle Krabs is a big name to me. Hey, he follows me, which is awesome. Yeah, I really like Kyle Krabs and what he's. I thought I was gonna mention him for some other reason tonight. Yeah, I will mention him. Kyle Krabs, one of his favorite prospects later on. But continue, Jake.
Yeah, I think Devin Bush is somebody that would definitely be an option. I like I like his athleticism overall. I think what he gets knocked on is his lack of height. But I mean, if anybody that knows me, and I know Alexis, you're getting to know me, Alex, you do know me. I don't really care about size. I say undersized for people that care about that during the podcast. But when I was talking about Gerald Everett being undersized, I don't actually think Gerald Everett's undersized. I think it's kind of ridiculous, and I think that's the only reason that the Rams were able to snag the greatest defensive player of all time in Aaron Donald. And yes, I said that. So, size does not bother me. And,
I think Denzel Perryman, linebacker from Miami, got drafted by the Chargers, and he's doing great over there. He was only 5'11".
I know, and that's the guy that you really compare.
Linebacker.
Yeah, you compare all those kind of guys to somebody like that. Now, Devin Bush is somebody that I think is only going to see his name kind of grow. 5'11", 222. I think that's pretty good size.
They say he's 240 now.
240.
They say he's up to 240.
Huh. Well, I mean,
yeah, he posted. He made a post where he was 5'11", 220, 225ish, and then he gained a lot of weight. So.
Well, he's going to deliver some pop. When you get to the second level, if you get to the second level, he's going to make you pay for it. I think he's a good tackler. I don't think he's a great tackler, but he hits hard. He's kind of like Barron. I don't think he sheds blocks particularly well, though. I don't think he's great at that. But I do think, he's a higher level guy, knows what he's doing. He's very smart. He's an explosive player, and he's just somebody that I think you'll see probably makes his name kind of like a James Laurinaitis in the NFL, where he's around for 10 years. I don't think he will end up being a Hall of Famer, but he'll always be that really good player that you remember years later. And I think he's a lot like Laurinaitis.
Why do you have to do Laurinaitis like that?
I don't think
my guy.
I don't think Laurinaitis is a Hall of Famer, but I think he's really, really good and doesn't get enough respect. That was kind of where
I agree. I agree. I was just kidding because I grew up watching him, but no, I agree.
He's not quite as athletic as Devin Bush, though. Devin Bush, that's where his athleticism will translate, and the way he's able to shoot gaps is impressive. Just once anybody gets their hands on him, I just think he's a total, non-factor. Whereas the guy you mentioned earlier, in Mack Wilson, is gonna, break right through that. I think he sheds blocks well. Somebody like him, though, that's the problem. You get your guy that does it all, and then you go later on the draft and you see why they're falling. And I don't think Devin Bush is necessarily a guaranteed first rounder because he's such a liability as somebody that can't really shed blocks. So that's just my take on him.
Yeah,
right.
See, the thing is, I see him as a replacement for Barron. They compare a lot. If I was a defensive coach, I want one linebacker that has range and speed, someone like Corey Littleton, and then you have to have someone that complements him that's a big run stuffer, a great tackler kind of linebacker. And I don't really see that in Devin Bush. He's more of a Barron thing, but he is an option.
I like Devin Bush. I mean, for me, the only weakness that he has is his size, if you consider that a weakness. But I have him going in the beginning of the second.
I think that's a really good valuation where he's somebody that could sneak in the first. We've seen it happen before. But I think that's really what he is. He's an early second-round pick. And the problem with the draft is when you get guys like that are, borderline early second, late first, they get drafted earlier, and then the expectations are higher, and then they don't pan out as well. So, it's about fit. It's about where you're drafted. It's not always about where you're drafted, but sometimes, that those extra expectations do kind of hone in on somebody and can kind of, deter them. And that's something I'd watch with Devin Bush. Like, if he's somebody that goes to the combine, and obviously I think he'll do well, you could be looking at somebody that goes early, and he's just drafted way too high for, what he is. So, I mean, for Devin Bush, I hope that's not the case, because I just don't think that'd be a good scenario for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alex, you said Devin Bush. For me, I'm going to go a linebacker. I'm going to go with Terrell Hanks, who I just absolutely love. This guy, New Mexico State, I don't think he's getting enough buzz. I pointed him out in a couple of my Senior Bowl articles because he really made a lot of noise in practice. I didn't really know who he was. 6'2", 235, senior linebacker. The guy covers like a defensive back. And why is that? Because he was originally a defensive back. He was converted to a linebacker. Moves extremely well. He's got new age athleticism, kind of what you're looking for, when you have a league that has guys like Jalen Smith and, obviously, Leighton Vander Esch, that linebacker group, and guys like, Deion Jones for the Falcons. It's a copycat league, and I keep saying it. Eventually, teams are just going to copy those teams. They're going to go out and they're going to get the ultra-athletic linebackers that may not be as fundamentally sound as some of the, finesse linebackers, but they're flashier. They can make more of the big play. And that's really where I see with Terrell Hanks. This is somebody that I think does a very good job of shedding blocks. He can tackle. He can cover. He's got an unbelievable motor. Sometimes his processing skills are kind of, he doesn't see. I won't say it's all the time, but there's sometimes he doesn't see things as well as I'd like him to. But he's got really no issues in coverage due to the defensive back background. And I just think the fact is when you have somebody that is that fluid, in their movement and can go all over the field like that, they kind of become less of a defensive player and more of a weapon. And I think you have a legit weapon on defense when you have Hanks out there. And, he'd be, to me, I haven't finished grading him because I want to see more. I've seen 3 games of his, and I was just blown away. So I do want to see more, but right now I'd probably say he could flirt with the first round. He's not going to. I know in the NFL, I think he'll fall in the 3rd. But he's kind of a must grab for the Rams, with 2 third-round picks, with the compensatory picks for Trumaine Johnson and Sammy Watkins. But what's your guys' thoughts on Terrell Hanks?
I really like Hanks. I have him going in the 3rd or 4th as well, but I think that's really only because of exposure. I've only watched a little bit of his tape, but something that you mentioned that I had was he wasn't great at the processing stuff. He often commits, I think, a little bit too quickly. But something that stood out to me with Hanks was his range. I mean, he can play sideline to sideline. He's extremely flexible. He's fast. And like you said, I mean, I think weapon would be an accurate description just from what I've seen of Hanks. Again, I've only seen one video of him, but I was impressed with what I saw.
Sounds like we all want a linebacker.
Yeah.
Alex,
maybe a few.
What are your thoughts on him?
I can't say anything. I will be honest. I have not watched him, so I cannot have an opinion on him.
Fair enough.
But it sounds like we all want a linebacker, and I think if we were to replace a linebacker, it'd be Mark Barron, correct?
Yeah, I would.
It would save $6 million, and we all believe that Corey Littleton is better anyways.
For sure.
Well, I'm the president of the Corey Littleton fan club, so you're not gonna hear any back talk from me. I just think you got to get him somebody else, and I kind of have to give credit to Barrett. I mean, he's been through a lot of injuries. He had an Achilles injury that kind of held him back, and I think he really started coming on towards the end of the year. I just think they paid him so much money in today's standards that you kind of have to let him go. If he were to come back on a reduced rate, like say they got him for $2 million, I would absolutely suck it up and have him at linebacker. But, the fact of the matter is he's not going to do that. He's going to want to get paid. If he's cut, he's going to want to at least get, around the $6-7 million range. So I don't think he's really an option in that regard. And, I'm not trying to knock on Micah Kaiser because I know a lot of people liked him, but this is why I liked a guy like Tigre Scales more, or, somebody along those lines, somebody that could really move. Micah Kaiser is more of the old school linebacker thumper, and that's great. But when people kept calling Rashaan Evans old school last year because he was a thumper as well, I didn't understand that. Rashaan Evans has, serious ability. He has next level athleticism. When I look at Micah Kaiser, he looks like a great special teamer, but he looks like kind of a pick that the Rams got with Bryce Hager. Hager's even more athletic, but somebody that's going to fill the role on special teams, be, a sub linebacker, sub package linebacker. But I don't see Kaiser ever amounting into that, stud that everyone was, chanting for. And I think that's why I do expect the Rams, like you guys, I do expect the Rams to draft a linebacker. And I'm really hoping it's somebody like Hanks or friend of the podcast, Khalil Hodge from Buffalo, because I think somebody like that, maybe Devin Bush, like there are options there, and I think they should make that decision.
Yeah, going back to Rashaan Evans, that I didn't really like him, but I thought he was a better cover guy than people were giving him credit for. And back to Micah Kaiser, when I was at the Super Bowl, I saw a Micah Kaiser jersey, which was pretty cool, but then again, it's like, why would you have a Micah Kaiser jersey?
Maybe he's related to him.
Exactly.
Maybe. To be fair, maybe. I did run into the Havenstein family, which was pretty cool.
That is cool.
All right. Well, I'm up, right?
Yes, you are.
So I'm going to take a page out of Alex's book and talk about a guy from my team, which is Notre Dame. And I'm going to talk about Julian Love, cornerback out of Notre Dame.
Ooh,
now, I love him too, and not just because he's from my favorite school. I really, truly think that he's a guy that should go in the first round, but I think he's going to fall to the second round. But if he's there at 31, I think the Rams should take him because we've got Peters and Talib, but they've both got 1 year left in their contract, and I don't foresee the Rams keeping both of them because I think they're both going to want relatively large contracts. So I think if we can take Julian Love at 31, have him sit a year, that would be perfect. I just think he's someone who's probably hasn't even reached his full potential yet. I think he's a guy that is more of an intelligent corner probably than a talented corner. And I don't mean that as a knock. I just think he reads plays really well. He's extremely good at reading routes. He seems to always get there before the receiver does. He knows what's going on. No quarterback wants to throw his way. And I think he's a guy that can make an immediate impact. And I just think if he's there, if the Rams want someone in the corner position, I think that they should strongly consider taking him.
Yeah, I think that's somebody, when you look at that big playability, the reason why the Rams went out and got a Marcus Peters or, an Aqib Talib, it's to create turnovers, but it's to create points off turnovers. And when I look at, Julian Love, I think this is somebody that's going to be have kind of a similar impact to a Janoris Jenkins as far as somebody that can really, make a lot of noise as a game breaker. And I know you probably obviously saw that at Notre Dame. But I'm really impressed with that ability, and that's something, obviously he can cover well. I mean, I'm not saying, because I think people often associate, he's an all or nothing guy. No, he's not that. I think he plays fairly grounded, and I think he can help you as a cover guy. But I also think if you need an interception at the end of the game, you need a big play. I think he's a guy that can make it.
Oh yeah.
But that's my take on Julian Love.
Yeah, so I was at the Cotton Bowl when Clemson played Notre Dame. We all know how that game. I don't want to brag too much, but Julian Love was hurt, and he didn't get to play much that game. And Trevor Lawrence and Clemson were able to burn that secondary, and that secondary was great for Notre Dame all year long. So obviously, Love had an impact on that defense.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember when I was watching that game and Love came out, I knew it was over then. I mean, he's just a guy who makes an immediate impact, and you notice when he's gone. I think he's just so smart, and not to mention, physically gifted, because he's got great ball skills, and he can force that turnover better than most corners in this draft, I think. But I really like him a lot.
Yeah, and Clemson didn't even get going until he went out, so he obviously made an impact on that defense.
Look at him trying to soften the blow. He's just like, well, you had an opportunity, and you get I'm messing with you, Alex.
Hey, I don't want to be a homer too much. I'm not as big as a homer as you probably think I am, but
I thought you were going to say I am.
I mean, I get called that all the time. I mean, anytime I do a mock draft, I'm always looking for that Notre Dame guy. So it's all right.
All right. Well, I mean that's cool because my next player after Alex goes will be from my favorite school. So Alex, it's your turn. Who you want to share with everybody?
So my next guy is Garrett Bradbury, a center from North Carolina State, and he would be an option for the Rams if they were to trade down from 31. I think he's a fundamentally sound center. Is Sully leaving, and yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff of him on Twitter. A bunch of Draft Network guys are raving about him. And I got to see him play against Clemson. Thought he had a great game. That was the only thing going for NC State in that game. But what do y'all think?
I like him a lot from what I've seen. I honestly had no idea who he was until a few months ago. People, were talking about him. And he's someone that I think – I personally want the Rams to draft some line depth later on, and he's someone that I think they should take. I haven't seen anything from him that I didn't like.
I agree. I mean, I think you have to take line depth. I think Garrett Bradbury is a good selection. There are a lot of guys at the Senior Bowl that I thought, stood out. I think this offensive line group, there's a lot of talent there, and I definitely think it would be wise for the Rams to explore that area of the draft. When you look at, obviously, Roger Saffold, he's going to be a free agent, and the Rams can either choose to sign him and keep the band going or let him go. And if they let him go, it's going to be kind of an end of an era, in my opinion. I mean, he's been there since the Bradford, draft class from Indiana. So it's 33rd overall pick. So, it'd be tough to let him go. I know everyone wants to see Blythe go out the door, but for me, I thought Austin Blythe, he struggled towards the end of the year, but let's not forget how great he was in the beginning first 11 weeks. So let's not forget that. He just needs to get better, I guess, as far as finishing a season. But Sullivan, I definitely see he kind of has to go regardless if he retires or not. I just don't think. Obviously he's very intelligent, but I think the Rams really could use another center. And Brian Allen, to me, is a backup type of player, somebody that is spot starter, but I don't think he is a long-term option at the center position. So I definitely think the Rams should. They have all three positions really they could go because they're going to need some depth behind. They're going to need depth behind Rob Havenstein because if, say, Whitworth retires, Noteboom's in there. And then it's Noteboom and Havenstein. Who do you have in the back? I know they have Darrell Williams, who was just signed to a futures contract, but that'd be pretty much it. I mean, they don't really have a lot of depth. So, yeah, I think you absolutely have to go offensive line. My player next, to kind of keep this whole, I guess, homerism going, I'm going with Daniel Wise of Kansas. I'm a huge Kansas Jayhawk fan, as this podcast knows, and Daniel will be on the podcast pretty soon. I think within a few weeks. He's somebody that, I'll say this right now, I'm not trying to knock the Kansas coaching staff, even though none of them are at Kansas anymore. But the fact of the matter is this: I think Daniel Wise was not used correctly at Kansas. He's somebody that I think is really going to be able to help in all areas. He can stop the run. I think he's got some decent ability to rush the passer. I think he's got a really quick first step, and he showed out. I mean, I wasn't there, but everything I was told and I read, it sounds to me like he showed out at the East-West Shrine game. Didn't get the call-up because, well, I won't say it, but he's not from the Senior Bowl area, the Alabama, the Auburn. He's not SEC. So they brought up the Texas A&M kid who was just as deserving, Daylon Mack. But those two dominated. His gap penetration is unbelievable. I watched him completely destroy his assignments at West Virginia. It was this year. He had a couple, not so great games, but again, I think it was more based on the scheme fit. I just didn't like the way they played him. He was always used as a 5-tech. And to me, I thought he was overachieving. I don't think that's his thing. I think he's more of a 3-tech. I don't know if he could play the 1-tech, but I definitely feel like he's a 3-technique type of defensive lineman. He is versatile because he played 5-tech in college, but would I use him there? No. And I think he's got a decent, I would at least say I think he's got a decent bunch of pass rush, moves to get through. So I think this is somebody you draft him, you put him next to Donald, you put him next to John Franklin Myers, Brockers, whoever. I think he'll have a good first rookie season, and he's somebody that's kind of a glue guy. He was a glue guy at Kansas. He was there when they had Dorrance Armstrong, and everyone was talking about Dorrance Armstrong Jr., and I love Dorrance Armstrong Jr. He was great for them. But the fact of the matter is, I think Daniel Wise was kind of the unsung hero of that defense, and he's not getting enough talk. So that's my guy, and I think the Rams could probably get him. I'd say his stock definitely rose after that East-West Shrine game, so I'd say 4th round if we're being realistic, 3rd if we're being generous. What are your guys' thoughts?
All right, hey, I want to mention that I was on that Dorrance Armstrong boat with you, Jake. I thought the Rams should have targeted him. They should have targeted him in the 3rd round.
We're not we're not going to go over that because that hurt me.
He went the 4th or 5th, whatever it was. The Rams passed on just like Ogbo too. I thought the Rams should have looked at Ogbo in the 3rd round. They took him in the 6th, I think. That was crazy.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't really know much about Daniel Wise. I'm not gonna lie. I've heard of him, obviously, but it's hard for me to stomach a KU game.
Oh wow.
So I truly have no problem with KU. I'm just my hometown team is Mizzou, so you're kind of taught to just disassociate. Right. Yeah. So but I have nothing. I can't comment on him. I'm sure I've heard that he's good though. I actually, from what I've seen, I see him going in the 4th, like you said, or the 5th.
Yeah, I mean, again, obviously he played at KU, and I get that. But they have some good recruits coming in. I think Les Miles is going to turn around that program, so we could be talking about a lot more Kansas players and drafts in the future. But right now, I think I've gotten used to there's at least one KU player that's worth talking about in the early day 3, day 2 range, and last year it was Dorrance. This year I would say it's Daniel Wise. Who's your player next, Alexis, that you're going to talk about?
So I'm going to talk about Cody Ford, the tackle out of Oklahoma. And this is a guy, obviously he's going in the 1st round. I think he could be there at 31. I doubt it, but I just think, especially if Whitworth retires, I'd like to see us draft a replacement for Whitworth. I'm not that big of a Noteboom fan, honestly, so I would hope that we would draft someone instead of use him. But I mean, Cody is 6'4", he's 340 pounds, but he moves like he's 50 pounds lighter. I mean, he's fast, he's quick, he's agile. Arguably the best tackle in the draft. If not, then he's 2nd or 3rd. But the only thing I think that some people don't like about him is they say that he's not as tall as they would like a tackle to be. But I haven't seen that be an issue for him at all. I'd love for the Rams to take him at 31 if he's available. I think he easily fits into the role that Whitworth has if Whitworth retires. If not, then I don't think we should be taking a tackle the first round. But we'll see.
Yeah, so I like Cody Ford a lot. I also really like Noteboom, so that kind of hurts. But it was nostalgia also because I was at the Senior Bowl. One of my first interviews, I sat down with Joe Noteboom, and then he got drafted by the Rams. Pretty cool. But, I mean, I can see that, you know. I can see Cody Ford. I mean, I won't comment too much on it because I do really feel like Noteboom is the bookend guy. I think he's going to take over for Whitworth. I think he's going to excel. And I think he's only getting better. And really, one thing I really want to bring up is how much I want to draft guys with, you know, that have tools and that are coachable in this draft. Because when you look at, you know, the fact you have a guy like Aaron Cromer, I mean, the Patriots, who saw they had, you know, Dante Scarnecchia, and he was huge for them. That offensive line was unreal. But the Rams' offensive line was great too. Let's not use, you know, the Super Bowl as a barometer to, you know, measure how important the Rams' offensive line was and how good they were. They were really good. And I think, you know, the guys that they have, I think if you draft a guy with tools, maybe you draft a Titus Howard from an Alabama State. Les Snead, I know, likes his Senior Bowl guys, and you just let him go to work under somebody like Aaron Cromer, kind of like whips him into shape. I also think watch out for a free agency acquisition in Ryan Groy. The Rams signed him to an offer sheet it was 2 years ago, and the Bills matched it, so they didn't get him, but he's a free agent now. And one of the friends of Downtown Rams, Sly, who's on Twitter, shout out to him, he messaged, which is interesting, he messaged Ryan Groy and was like, will you be signing with us this year? And Groy liked it. So, you know, I think that'd be an interesting fit. Obviously, Groy and his connections, familiarity with Aaron Cromer go back to Buffalo. So it's just, you know, a tidbit I'll throw in there. But yeah, Cody Ford I think is a good pick. I really like Noteboom. So
yeah, Cody Ford, I think he's a stud too. If I'm drafting an offensive lineman, I'm looking for depth, I think, especially if Whitworth comes back and if John Sullivan comes back.
Yeah, and then the next guy that I talk about is a depth guy that I love.
All right,
my
Alex,
turn?
it is your turn.
All right, so here's my mention of Kyle Krabs. His favorite guy is Brian Burns, an edge rusher from Florida State. And he had him going number 3 overall in one of his mock drafts earlier in January. And I think he'll be there at 31. He's on the lighter side. He's listed at 236. I thought he was lighter than that. And I think he'd be an option if the Rams were to move on from Dante Fowler Jr. If there was one bright spot from Florida State this year, it was Brian Burns.
Yeah, you know, I have heard nothing but good things about him, but I didn't see many FSU games this year, so I probably can't give much insight into that. But I have heard that he's in that there's kind of like a top 5, I think, edge guys that stand out from everybody else this year, and I think that he's in that group.
Yeah, I think Brian Burns is he's one of the top edge rushers. I wouldn't say he's the cream of the crop, but I would say he's up there. You know, I definitely see something along those lines where you talk about a guy that maybe he is a little bit on the thin side. He's not as filled out as I would like. Not somebody like a Jachai Polite or somebody like that, but you know, I definitely see the bend, and I think if you're looking for somebody that is going to translate to the NFL, I'm not really worried about the thin side. I'm more worried about, do you have bend? Do you have a counter move? Do you have a plan as a pass rusher? And he's got all of that. So I think that's a really good pick. I don't think he'll be there at 31. I'm sorry, Alex. I know you're getting your hopes up, but I don't see it happening. I think he's a top 10 pick. I think, you know, in this league, pass rusher's huge. I know a lot of teams, again, copycat league, cliche I'm going to keep bringing up, But I think a lot of teams are eventually going to try and copy, what the Rams have with Aaron Donald getting interior pressure. But edge has not died yet. You saw Bradley Chubb last year, how big of an impact he could make. You saw, obviously, Myles Garrett. You've seen these guys. Carl Lawson in the 4th round, who I mentioned earlier. I mean, there's a lot of edge talent that's coming in this league, and they're making an impact early on. And Harold Landry's another one I throw out there. I definitely suspect that somebody like Brian Burns is really going to translate well at the next level, and thus I feel like he's going early. So again,
hey, this edge rusher draft class is really deep. I think some of them are bound to fall just because of how deep this class is. It might be Burns, might not be Burns, might be Polite. I mentioned to you before this podcast that I was going to talk about him, but I'm actually not going to.
Oh, okay. Well. Wow, I like set the table up for you and everything. My player that I'm going to talk about is somebody that has a mean streak, and really I love offensive linemen that are just nasty. Like it reminds me of when the Rams had Harvey Dahl, and when Sam Bradford was hit by Mike Mitchell. I still say it was ridiculous. Near the sideline towards ACL, and my one moment that I'll always remember is when Harvey Dahl came over and was about to body slam Mike Mitchell. Basically, the offensive line has to be the enforcer. You can't let anybody hit your quarterback and get away with it. You also can't let anybody hit your quarterback, so there's that. But Harvey Dahl kind of have that feeling, that vibe. People forget he was really good with the Rams. He was an elite player with the Falcons. See, I see Dalton Reisner of Kansas State. A guy I heard him personally. I didn't interview him. He was surrounded by everybody. But I heard him personally when asked what position he wants to play. He doesn't want to move from right tackle. He knows he can play right tackle at the next level. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm the guy that was banging the table for Isaiah Wynn to stay at tackle. I'm somebody that will never... Well, not never, because I'm doing it right now, but I normally don't want to have the tackle guard, conversation. If a guy can play tackle, let him play tackle. Like I don't worry about, like the length and everything. I just felt like Isaiah Wynn was capable. I felt like Tyrell Crosby out of Oregon last year was capable. And I know everyone likes to move tackles to guard. Unfortunately, I'm about to destroy that with Dalton Reisner. And the reason I say that is because I'm fine with no boom at left tackle. Andrew Whitworth still could come back. Let's not act like he already retired. So I'm fine with that. However, with Saffold, I don't know if he's back. I don't. And center, I probably moved Blythe to center. So now that I moved Blythe over to center, my right guard is going to be Dalton Reisner. In this scenario, why I would draft him. Again, mean streak. I really didn't see anybody move him once at the Senior Bowl. And there were a lot of guys at the Senior Bowl. He was beaten by, I think, Montez Sweat, and that was about it. I mean, Charles Omenihu looked like he might have had him. I didn't see the win. I know people were saying that Charles Omenihu beat him. I didn't see it. I only saw Montez Sweat beat him the entire time I was there. So he is a guy that can win in pass pro. Any speed rusher, and I guess this is kind of why I would move him inside at guard, kind of overwhelms him. So he's a little bit like a Rob Havenstein in, the fact if you get, some guy with enough speed off the edge, he's going to be a little bit of an issue. At least 2 plays he could make, and if those 2 plays are the plays of the game, you could be in trouble. So you move him in at guard. You get rid of one of his bigger weaknesses. This is somebody that anchors well. I just feel like he can win with power. He is literally waving guys on, saying, bring it. He will take them down. He doesn't look like the biggest offensive lineman in this class. I think he plays bigger than he really is, which I like. He's just got this, this physical nature to him that I just feel like there's no doubt in my mind. I saw it last year with Will Hernandez of UTEP, who the Giants ended up drafting in the 2nd round. There's no doubt in my mind somebody like this will pan out in the NFL. Again, pass protection, his speed rusher problem kind of goes away when you move him in at guard. And I think when you look at, his footwork, I think he can get better. But you're looking at somebody, at least in my mind, who, he had an injury in his career. So, he did have a shoulder injury. You do have to worry about that in 2017, but he stayed relatively healthy aside from that. And I think he's just got great technique, and he's a mauler. So you add somebody like that next to maybe, Saffold resigns, you have Blythe at center, and he works out, and then you have Noteboom / Whitworth, whoever plays there, and then you have Havenstein the long term. The Rams, once again, are one of the top offensive lines in the league, and I think Reisner's somebody that is going to rise, no pun intended, in the draft. I think, he's going to blow up the combine.
Right. I love him. He's someone that I truly think is incredible. And I actually kind of see him at maybe more of a center, maybe center guard. I know that he would prefer to play tackle, but I see him more on the inside. And I agree with what you were saying about liking offensive linemen just being, just dirty, hardcore thrashers. I think that's how they should be. I think he's that way. It's funny you mentioned Will Hernandez because the Giants are kind of my second team that I follow, and I was really happy when they drafted him last year, and he played incredible this year. And Dalton kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's a safe pick, and I think it's strange how you said something very good about a Kansas State player there, Jake.
I went from Kansas to Kansas State.
Every time I mention Kansas State, you just want to puke.
Here's the thing: Kansas dominates them in just about every single sport,
except that basketball game last week.
Do you know?
All time, yeah. Their all-time record. I will get it on my screen at some point, maybe throughout this podcast. Their all-time record it's not even close.
What about Mizzou and Kansas?
That'd be interesting. I don't have those offhand. I think I think Kansas obviously wins basketball.
I've heard that. I think Kansas wins basketball, but Mizzou is everything else. Because I did hear something about that before, but I can't be sure about that.
Yeah, well,
but I don't know.
Mizzou football though, that would be tough because people have to keep in mind Kansas was really good back in the day. They never won, titles to show for it, but they were always really good. And then, around the 2000s, it's really kind of went downhill. And then 2008, the Miracle Orange Bowl season, and then they were kind of back to the basement. But like I said, Les Miles, we're coming back, so get ready for it. Anyway,
we'll
Alexis,
see.
It's your time.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about another line guy, Max Sharping out of Northern Illinois. I think he's super underrated. I think he's somebody who could be an immediate starter in the NFL, but again, I think the exposure issue kind of affected him. I don't think he's someone who was on everybody's radar, but I think he's extremely versatile. He can play left or right tackle, and I honestly think that if you wanted, you could even throw him in at the guard position. He started all 48 games of his college career, and he allowed no sacks and in 425 snaps, and that's one of the best rates of protection in the country. I mean, if he's someone who I think if you put him at in Alabama or Florida or someone with a lot of exposure, he's going the first round. I think he's someone who is going to go up when you watch him at the combine. I think he's going to really do well there. And fun fact, he follows me on Instagram. So who knows, I could maybe, ask him about the Rams and try and get him I could just speak it into existence and the Rams could take him round 4.
Yeah. He's somebody I thought he played well, but it was really the Senior Bowl that I thought he didn't kind of take over the way I wanted him to. But I don't think it's a bad pick. Max Sharping, I'd probably move him in at guard. Wow, I'm totally contradicting myself. Oh my god. So yeah, I'd probably move him in at guard, even though I hate contradicting myself.
Well, see, I kind of see that too. Like I watched him only at tackle, but like I could see him playing guard. I think that it actually probably is where he should be playing long term.
Yeah, he just speaks guard to me, and that's kind of why I see that. Alex, what are your thoughts on Max Sharping?
Hey, there's nothing wrong with versatility. I think that's the number one quality in an offensive lineman. I think we've seen offensive linemen for the past couple of years that have played multiple positions do well in the NFL. I haven't gotten, but I will one day. And sounds like you guys have a lot to say about him. And I'll have to see if he looks more of a tackle or a guard to me. I'm not going to pull a Stephen A. Smith. That's why I cannot make.
You're not going to say, well, I think, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. So I could literally say anything I wanted to about him, but hey, I'm going to be honest. I have not watched him. I'm not going to act like I have watched him either. So.
I mean, I'm excited to watch him at the combine. I think he's one of the guys I'm most excited to see because I think he could either skyrocket his stock or dramatically go down based on what he does. I think he's one of those guys.
Yeah, and I think he reminds me really similar to last year's guy at the Senior Bowl, Austin Corbett. You know, Corbett was from Nevada, so he didn't have a ton of exposure either. And, you know, that he's somebody that, like, they were trying to make work at tackle, and it just wasn't working. He was more of a guard. That's kind of where I see with Sharping. I think he was kind of put in a rough position at tackle against, you know, the best of the best. And I think he, you know, translates better to guard. That's just my take, though. I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I could be wrong. No, I think, and he's someone I kind of have like this weird, like I like Northern Illinois just because it's like I'm in Chicago right now. I'm in Chicago a lot. I have family up here, and Northern Illinois is kind of in the area that I am. So anytime I see someone with legitimate talent from Northern Illinois, I think I just get excited. But I really think he'd fit well in the Rams. So I really hope that he's there and they're interested in the 4th round.
Hey, and the Senior Bowl check mark, so I think he's definitely a possibility. Alex, it is your turn. You are up.
All right, so my next guy is Deonte Thompson. We already mentioned him, safety from Alabama. Now, he had a game to forget against Clemson, and the one play that everyone wants to talk about is one where Justin Ross went for like 75 yards, and Thompson slipped on that play. But you can't really fault him because there was a guy covering Ross, and he fell down, and it was one-on-one Ross and Thompson slipped and fell too, and Ross went all the way to the end zone. And recency bias can have him fall because like he ended on a low note, so you can see him fall. He was considered a middle of the first round earlier in the year, but you could see him fall to the 2nd or 3rd round maybe. I think he'll be good. I think he's a 2nd rounder. But yeah, I think safety. I think we're gonna have to replace LaMarcus Joyner. Now, when you're talking about safeties, there's free safety, strong safety. I think in today's NFL, you got to be able to cover and play in the box. I think Thompson can play both. He shares both qualities. So yeah, I think he'd be a good LaMarcus Joyner replacement.
I like him. I mean, I think he was someone who at the beginning of the season I actually had him as the top safety in the draft, but then when I saw more of Adderley kind of took that number 1. But I think he's number 2 for sure.
Yeah, I kind of lean. It could go either way. He could be 2 or 3. I think Adderley has number 1 locked up. I'm still not done grading Thompson. Right now, I have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as number 2. And I hate to say it, but yeah, that game to forget was really bad. You know, I think it's one thing that's honestly not getting talked about enough. Because when you talk about one of the best safeties in this class, and he, you know, pretty much throws together his worst performance when it matters the most, I do take that into account and discussion. And, I think that was a little worrisome. That because I watched, being at the Senior Bowl, I watched, on the other hand, my number one safety, Nasir Adderley, make the play of the game and, pick off Tyree Jackson, and change the outcome of that game. Completely changed the momentum. Tyree Jackson's driving down the field, and that interception sealed the game. So, the way he played against Clemson does still hurt me. And it is a little biased. It's recency bias. I get it. But I don't know if we can just discount that.
And if I'm watching a player and I can only watch a game or two or maybe even three, I want to watch the college football playoff games because those are the games that have the most NFL talent. And if you cannot play against NFL talent, then can you play in the NFL? And that's college. And Clemson had a bunch of freshmen on offense and a bunch of non-draft eligible players. You have T. Higgins, you have Justin Ross, you have Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback, a bunch of young guys feasting on that Alabama defense. So, yeah, it sucks for him that he had to play his worst game. And it was more than just that one slip-up on that long Ross touchdown. He did not have a good game at all. But other than that, he was a great player for Alabama.
Yeah, no, I think he's a good prospect, but that was a little worrisome. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, and there was a rumor too that he was actually going to return back to Alabama, and then I saw that and I thought, he's not declaring, and then right after that he declared. So he kind of pulled a Tyree Jackson a little bit.
Yeah, it's tough in that case because obviously, again, like he played well the whole year, but then he had a bad last game. I guess I'm being a little too hard on him, but I do think you can't discount that, if that makes sense. So, my next guy is going to be somebody that really, I thought, made himself some money already, just off his college tape. But then when he went to the Senior Bowl, people are saying, there were mixed reviews. He wasn't that good, all that. I kind of disagree. He's a friend of the podcast. He came on. I actually don't think I've aired that episode yet. But I have interviewed him. And his name is Jalen Ferguson, and he's the FBS all-time leader in sacks. This is somebody that can win with speed. He can win with power. He's not the fastest rusher. I will say that. But I think his flexibility, his ankle flexion mainly, is something that I was really impressed by because a lot of people kept saying he has no bend, he's not going to make it, he doesn't have much of a pass rush plan. And I guess you can kind of credit that to, he dominated his conference. And, I get Louisiana Tech isn't the best. They play in Conference USA. I get that. But this guy's 6'5", 269. I think he has a really nice body structure to start on the edge. Kind of reminds me of a Marcus Davenport, who I wanted the Rams to draft last year. I felt like he was, he's a little raw, but I felt like he was going to be a superstar. Jalen Ferguson isn't raw. I feel like he's more. I feel like if you're looking for one guy that has the highest floor in this draft, it might be Ferguson because he can come in and immediately play, in my opinion, day one. I think he's really just going to make his money, as a pass rusher. He could get better as a run stopper for sure, but I still I think he's kind of an underrated, guy in the run game. He's got really long arms. His frame's outrageous. And he's somebody that I think uses his hands extremely well. You've seen how Aaron Donald uses them for the Rams. It doesn't really even matter about your quick first step anymore, how flashy you are. If you don't have any hand usage, once the offensive line gets their hands on you, you're done. You're basically stonewalled. So he's really good at countering. He can win with power again. He can win with speed. He's got a really, really good push-pull move that he uses kind of a lot, maybe overuses it, but this is somebody that I think is going to start day one. And I'm seeing him, I think Matt Miller was the one that had him going to the Rams at 31. I had him more as a second-round pick, but he's starting to gain that buzz. And if he does, I mean, he's probably in the Rams territory. What do you guys think about him?
Yeah, he's definitely got the NFL size. Want me to go? Yeah, so he's got the NFL size. He's 6'5", 262 pounds. He had 17 and a half sacks this year, which is just crazy, in only 13 games. So imagine what he could do at the NFL level. And he had 26 tackles for loss, too. So like Jake said, he absolutely dominated his conference. And, he has that athletic profile, just like Davenport, like you said. I was on Davenport last year. I thought he was good. I didn't think he was really good. But if Ferguson can Davenport played great this year. If Ferguson can do what Davenport did for the Saints this year, he'd be a solid player for the Rams.
Yeah, I really like Ferguson. He's somebody that at the beginning of the season, of this past NFL season, I had him round 1. Now I kind of have him round 2. But yeah, like you guys were saying, physically, he's insane. I think Davenport's a good comparison for him, and I wouldn't be upset if the Rams took him.
And how good do you think he is going to be at the combine? Like, yeah, I know he's not the fastest guy, but I will also say this. As an edge guy, I feel like we should be more worried about their splits than how fast they run in a 40-yard time. Because I feel like 40-yard time is great. It's a great tool for, like, you know, figuring out how great someone's long speed is. But at the end of the day, when do you have an edge guy really running 40 yards down the field? When he didn't do his job, or when someone else didn't do their job and they're chasing down somebody. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel, or you know, obviously in special teams. So I kind of feel like we should temper expectations there and kind of look and see what he runs in the, you know, the 10-yard split and see his explosion.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's someone, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody who's an LA Tech fan, and apparently people think that he's someone that could even go like mid first round. I don't think he's going to go that far, or that high, I mean. But as far as back to your point of how he's going to play, I think he's someone who could be a starter.
Yeah, I definitely can see him starting. A good fit for him, I think, would be the Rams. You know, I know that I believe he met with them. He said he met with every team, I think. So, you know, he'd definitely be an opportunity there. And I think, you know, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, if they, you know, Bud Dupree, I know they spent a high pick on him, but he really hasn't panned out. And I think if you just want that consistency on the edge, I think Jalen Ferguson's going to do that. Kind of a low risk, you know, high reward for the first at least 3-4 years with him. And at least that way you have somebody across from TJ Watt, you know, doing something.
And from what I know about Ferg, isn't he kind of like a pretty likable guy? I've heard that he...
Ferg is awesome. Like, you know, I interviewed him, and again, I haven't put that interview on. I got to get on that. But I interviewed him, and then I met him. And the thing is, when you interview somebody over the phone, like, it's cool, and I enjoy it. But when you get to talk to that person in person, like, I didn't interview Jalen at the media day because I had already done it. So we were just talking, you know, and it was really cool, you know, getting to know somebody like that. Really humble, like you said, very likable guy. This is somebody that has tools and is a likable guy. I think he's going to go higher than somebody that doesn't have, you know, the likable nature and may have those tools. That's kind of how you decide. A lot of teams won't take a guy that they don't like. Some guys just value talent over the actual person. Then they bring him in the locker room and they're like, well, we made a mistake. You're not going to be making a mistake if you pick Jalen Ferguson.
Right. All right. The next guy that I have is, I'm sorry, it's another homer pick. It's Tavon Coney, the linebacker out of Notre Dame. someone who is probably going to be around, I think, in that fourth round pick area. But I actually think he's the most underrated linebacker in this coming draft. He's a strong hitter. He can play either on the inside or the outside. He's extremely versatile. Something that stands out to me about him is he's a very patient linebacker, and I think he seems to read the defense well. He knows where to position himself every play. And I think that, we've been talking about kind of the Rams' need for a linebacker throughout this podcast. And I think he's somebody that if they don't take a linebacker in the first round, that they should look for in the fourth.
Yeah, I really like Coney. He's somebody that will be coming on the show soon, so I'm a big fan of his, obviously. And I thought he's somebody that was at the podium at the media day, so he's kind of a quote-unquote big deal. I know he comes from Notre Dame, and they were in the college football playoff, but he and Drew Tranquil, I like them both, and I
love Drew.
Yeah, I think they both made some money at the Senior Bowl. So I don't have a ton to say on Coney. I really like him so far. I'm not done evaluating him, but I really like him so far. My valuation from what I've seen is probably like a third rounder, I would say. I think that's fair. I think he's a day 2 guy, maybe a late day 2 guy, but I think he's a day 2 guy. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. And Drew, who you mentioned, is someone who is also a great linebacker for Notre Dame. Drew's problem is he unfortunately just had some crazy injuries.
He's the Alex Anzalone of this draft.
Right.
If he stays healthy, he'll be really good.
Yeah, and he's someone who I didn't plan to talk about, but he could also is someone who I think has kind of that maybe 5th round talent that the Rams could pick up. But Coney, I think, is a guy who has enormous potential and could easily, like you said, be a 3rd round pick. I hope he's around for that 4th round pick, but we'll see. I mean, I really like him, and everyone who I've talked to about him really likes him as well.
Yeah,
right,
Coney. Wait, what's that?
You didn't even talk about him yet. Sorry, my bad.
Oh, no, it's all good. I'm looking at his stats. He has 240 tackles over the past 2 years, 20 tackles for loss over the past 2 years, and 7 sacks for the past 2 years. So, and we know that Notre Dame defense has a great reputation, and he's in the middle of it, so he must be good. He's a little bit bigger than Devin Bush. He's 6'1", 6'2", and he's at 240, so he's definitely got that prototypical linebacker size. And I could see us taking someone like that. And he's more of that bigger linebacker that I was talking about than Bush or Mark Barron. And he would fit that play style a lot better, I think.
Yeah.
And so on to my last guy, since I only have 8 people, I have it could be any quarterback, really. And I know I didn't want to talk about your quarterback, Jake. I want to talk about Brett Ripien from Boise State.
Who's also my quarterback.
What's that?
He's also my quarterback.
I'm just glad you guys didn't bring up the quarterback I'm going to bring up this round.
Well, I thought your quarterback would be more of Gardner Minshew.
Here's the funny thing about this class. I like a lot of quarterbacks in this class. And it's considered, isn't it? Like, it's considered a bad class. I would.
Yeah.
It is
I like Tyree Jackson for the Rams. I like Gardner Minshew for the Rams. I like Brett Ripien. I mean, I think those guys make sense. If you're looking for your franchise quarterback, this is not the draft. But if you're looking for a guy that can develop in a Sean McVay offense and behind Jared Goff, this is the draft. I think they have to draft a quarterback this year.
No, I agree.
When your team's backup quarterback is Sean Mannion, you're going to fall in love with a whole bunch of quarterbacks to replace him. But yeah, Brett Ripien, I've seen the Draft Network raves about him. And Minshew, I think he's in that same class as Minshew. I wouldn't expect the Rams to take a quarterback too early. I think I talked about where the Rams would take one with you earlier in the year, Jake. And you said 3rd round is probably the earliest. And I don't really see us going that early because I think it'd be more beneficial for Jared Goff if the Rams were to bring in a veteran. And one guy I really like for the Rams would be Josh McCown, if that's possible. Uh, he sat behind Sam Darnold, and he actually played quite a bit when Sam Darnold was hurt.
I can't
But
believe I'm hearing this.
Yeah,
but
I don't
wait, why
know.
I'm confused. What are y'all talking about?
We're just messing with you.
We're just giving you a hard time. Keep
Yes. So quarterback, I think, like you said, this is a great quarterback class if you're looking for a backup quarterback, aka a quarterback that's better than Sean Mannion. So, and there's probably a whole bunch of them. Where do you think? I know you liked Kyle Lauletta a lot last year, Jake. What do you think? Where do you think Ripien or Minshew compare with Lauletta?
So this is a good one. I put them kind of in the same tier, but my highest graded quarterback is barely graded higher than Lauletta was last year, and that's Haskins. So, take that for how you will.
Gotcha.
I honestly can't say much about Brett. I haven't seen that much tape on him.
Watch his Colorado State film. It was a lot of fun, honestly. It was the exact opposite of fun as watching Daniel Jones take on Miami in ridiculous raining and monsoon weather game. Like, don't watch that game. Like, I almost throw tape like that. I almost throw in the garbage because I'm like, the weather was affecting the ball flight. I mean, like, it was ridiculous. So, yeah, I don't put too much stock in that, but I definitely recommend checking out Ripien. I love him. Alex, I'm glad you brought him up. I mean, I think he's right now, he's my number 2 guy. I have yet to scout Kyler Murray. I keep like, oh, I'll scout Kyler Murray, but I'm just so uncertain if he's going to the NFL, and I keep looking at other players because of it. I'll get to him eventually, but right now Ripien's number 2. And then I'd say Tyree is number 3 for me. So I think Ripien is a late first, early second, but he's not going to go there. But that's what I would value him at. I could see Ripien earliest going round 3 or 4. He just doesn't seem to be getting enough buzz to go that early. But it's great because he didn't get invited to the Senior Bowl, which was a travesty. But he's going to be at the Combine, and I'm really excited for it.
Wait, Ripien isn't going to the Combine?
No, he did get invited, but the Senior Bowl, he was left out.
Oh, the Senior Bowl. Okay.
And I won't even get into that because I was like, I don't even know how he was left out. But, yeah, so I like the Ripien pick, man. I'm going to go with somebody that pretty much tormented every single offensive lineman. He tormented quarterbacks, and it was at the Senior Bowl. Colin Saunders, he was unbelievable. I mean, I saw him. I didn't really know a ton about him. Western Illinois guy, just the quick first step. I watched him at 320 pounds, I believe. He did a backflip. I mean, he is just extremely athletic. He comes from a small school, so he's one of those guys that just takes over games. And, I was like, okay, what's this Western Illinois guy doing at the podium? Like he's, like it was a little surprising to me. And then I saw him practice, and I was like, okay, that's somebody that's going to be a problem. And then sure enough, in the game, he had a sack, and he's just an absolute nightmare, constantly moving his arms. He's got great hand usage. He is very powerful. He's quick. He finishes the job. And the thing I want to highlight on this, even Aaron Donald has his fair share of missed sacks or almost sacks. Chris Long, I called king of the almost sack. Colin Saunders, don't call him Kalen, he'll get mad. Colin Saunders, if he gets his arms around you, you're done. Like, it's not, you're going to slip out of it. Like, you're done. And I think that's one of the key attributes. He finishes the play. and his motor's off the charts. And another tidbit I'll add, if you guys didn't know who he was already, which you probably did, he had his first newborn. His newborn, I believe it was his daughter. I could be wrong, but she was born while he was at the Senior Bowl, and they asked him repeatedly if he was going to go because they understood, and he stayed. He's like, no, I'm going to stay, and I'm going to, earn my, spot, and eventually he'll be able to provide for that family. So I thought that was one of those like little, not really talked about things that I figured I'd throw out there. I thought it was really cool that he ended up staying, and he ended up missing such an important moment in his life.
Yeah, he's a guy that I had no idea who he was until the Senior Bowl. And then, as you stated, he generated a lot of buzz there. And I was absolutely blown away watching him play. The backflip was insane for a guy that big to be doing that. But again, like what you said, the thing that stood out to me the most is he was very hungry to prove himself. Like you said, he missed the birth of his daughter. He wanted to be there. He was dedicated. And I really like that about him. I'm very impressed with him. I think that, he's someone who could go a lot higher than the 4th round.
Hey, if he's going to prioritize football that much in his life, I want him in my locker room right now. I'm just saying that. I don't really know too much about him, but if he's going to participate in the Senior Bowl and not be there for his family when his baby is being born, I want him on my team.
Yeah. All right, Alexis, it's your turn. We're up to 8 prospects now?
Yeah, I've got my future Rams backup quarterback is
throwing down the gauntlet.
Right, is Clayton Thorson from Northwestern. He's someone who I mentioned to people, and I don't know what it is about him that people don't like, but when I watch him, I'm impressed. The first time I ever watched him play, I was actually in Chicago. I was watching a Northwestern football game with my grandpa, and I just remember watching the quarterback. I was like, who is this guy? That he was so mobile. He was taking hits. He was doing anything and everything. He's someone who has the experience to know when to throw the ball and when not to. Unfortunately, I think the only concern I have about him is he's not the most accurate quarterback, but I think he's somebody who would be perfect to back up Jared Goff and work with Sean McVay, and who I think should be around kind of in that 4th, 5th round area, but I don't know. I mean, he's obviously not. I don't think that he's Minshew, but what are your thoughts?
I like him. I was really, really bummed that he had that injury that kept him out of the Senior Bowl. At the same time, it's kind of a blessing being a Tyree Jackson fan, getting to see him in person, eventually interviewing him, meeting him. But that was a big opportunity for Clayton Thorson to kind of put himself. See, I know everyone was handing, the reins, it almost seemed like, to Daniel Jones and Drew Lock, but I didn't see enough from Lock to call him the number 1 quarterback in this class. I saw some things I liked. I thought he was the best-looking quarterback at times there. With Daniel Jones, I thought he was absolutely horrible, and I didn't understand the hype from the beginning. And then, obviously, the Senior Bowl, he had a really rough time. And I could just be hard on him because he's at Duke or whatever. But no, I didn't see it. But Thorson is an interesting one. Coming from Northwestern, obviously, the Big Ten, a lot of key matchups that he went up against. Obviously, your Ohio States and your Michigans and all that. So he is definitely somebody that I think you have to keep your eye on. I don't know off the top of my head. Maybe you might know, Alexis, if he was invited to the Combine.
I think he is.
I would like to see him throw at the Combine. I think that's really. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I know a lot of people were disappointed when Lamar Jackson didn't throw at the Combine and he didn't run. That was one of those things. I know. going back, this is a while ago, but do you remember Mizzou quarterback Blaine Gabbert, who was like, "Nah, I'm going to throw up my pro day," and then he didn't have like the greatest pro day. I'm a fan of let's do it in front of everybody else, so that I can set myself, apart from the rest. If I believe in myself as much, like, the thing is with these guys, you have to keep in mind a lot of these guys know, or at least believe in themselves enough to think that they're the best at their position. If you feel that you're the best at your respective position, why are you not, wanting to put yourself out there in front of everybody? Like, that's why I love when guys go to the Senior Bowl, guys go to the East-West Shrine Game, they go to the, the other bowls there's a million, the NFLPA, the Hall, all that. So that's one of the big indicators for me. Is this guy a dog? Does he like competition? Does he prefer everything in his own environment? Like, if it kind of just it rubs me the wrong way, maybe it shouldn't, when I'm evaluating somebody and they're like, no, I want everything to be comfortable and I want to do everything at my pro day only. Because
I totally agree.
Goff and Wentz, they both threw against each other at the combine. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of like.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
It says something about a guy's, I think, I don't want to say character, because I don't want to say someone who doesn't throw at a combine or run at a combine doesn't have good character. But I think, to play in the NFL, you have to be used to being under pressure, and you have to be used to having all eyes on you, and not everything is going to be comfortable, and not everything's going to go your way. So I think I definitely respect guys more who just, even if they don't do the best at the combine, I think I still respect them more if they, leave everything on the line and go out there and participate.
Yeah, I think it's very important for a quarterback to participate in the combine, in all the drills, especially because you're on the same field as everybody else, and you have all the wide receivers that you're not familiar with. You're in a facility that you're not familiar with, and it's quick pace. You go up, you throw, get back at the end of the line, the next guy throws, and you might have a different wide receiver every time, but you get to see quarterback A make a throw, quarterback B make a throw, and it's the same throw. And you get to see them back to back to back, whereas, like you said, at the pro day, you're going to be in a comfortable setting, and you might have your own wide receivers. It's a slower pace, and there's not as much pressure. It's not televised, or a lot of pro days aren't televised unless you're a very big program. Someone might tune into it, but the combine, everyone's watching. You have scouts from every team. Probably all 32 coaches are there, and then you have the meetings as well. It's very important.
Yeah, I do want to add to what Alexis said about he's not very accurate. Thorson, I will say this, he's missing pinpoint accuracy, but I feel like he is generally accurate. I think there's two different things. His placement could be better. But I think this is somebody that, is a rhythm passer that's going to operate well in a quick West Coast style offense. He would be a great backup, but at some point, depending on the coaching, development and everything, I think he could end up being a starter. He has that potential, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, Alex, you don't have another guy, correct?
Correct.
I just felt like rubbing it in. I knew you didn't have another guy. Anyway.
Since I didn't as prepared as you thought I'd be, okay, I'm sorry.
Nah, I'm messing with you.
Hey, the Rams season lasted an extra month this year, so I'm a month behind. All right.
Good excuse.
Once the Rams season ends, that's when draft season starts. And it was a lot later, which I can't complain at all. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I have Corey Ballantyne next. Kind of a under the radar guy in every meaning of the word. I mean, this is somebody that came from Washburn, D2 college. I really knew nothing about him coming in. And I go to the Senior Bowl. And this is the Senior Bowl that had Chris Boyd of Texas and Amani Oruwariye from Penn State. And Amari was trying to separate himself from this class and show that he was, in fact, the top cornerback. I didn't see it. And Chris Boyd was getting abused by, I believe it was, what's his face from Ohio State. Now I forget his name. But he was getting abused by him. Terry McLaurin. He really had himself a great Senior Bowl. And so when I saw those two, I was like, okay, now I need to see other guys step up. This is a perfect opportunity. Isaiah Johnson was the talk of the town, the big 6'3" cornerback from Houston, until he started getting beat. And, the quicker, Penny Hart, he kind of made him look like a fool out there. So, then his stock started to drop. So I was like, who is going to take over? A lot of these corners are getting abused. So I'm looking, and I see Mark Fields, and you mentioned him earlier, and I thought he was one of the best corners out there. And then I see the kid from Washburn that the first day he didn't even look like he belonged. And then the second and third, the third day, because the second day got rained out and it was indoors and we didn't have access to it. The third day, I just saw somebody that really has extremely fluid hips. That first thing. Second thing, he sticks with his guy. I think he's very, I would say he's very good at using the boundary to his advantage. Can play a guy, inside, outside. I think you'd probably prefer him to be a nickel corner to start, special teamer, develop him. But, I mean, you're talking 5th or 6th round for the Rams. I think he'd be a really good option. He's right up there with guys like Mark Fields. So, maybe even the second, the Division II, label, that might actually stop him from going, high. But I like Ballantyne a lot. I don't expect you guys to know who he is, but if you do, all the power to you. I just, he's somebody that really stood out to me at the Senior Bowl.
I know the name because there's a guy who I'm always doing mock drafts with on Twitter, and every 4th round he takes them. And so I've seen his name. I know Corey Ballantyne out of Washburn, but I've not watched any tape on him. I don't know much about him. But I know that, you and this guy, and I'm sure many more out there really like him.
Yeah, so all I got to say about him is he might be good. He might not be. I don't know. I could be wrong. I want to quote Stephen A. Smith. Yeah, I don't know too much about him either, so I'll pass.
Okay, then. I appreciate your insight there, Alex.
Yeah,
like I said,
I gave that way more insight than I was going to, so you're welcome.
No, I understand that. I was totally messing. Like I said, I didn't know if you guys were going to know him. I didn't expect you to. I had expected Alexis, because I saw that you were doing the Facebook mock draft. I did that last year. Fun little
I
thing
have
to
seen
do.
the name. I have seen the name.
But I had a feeling that you had seen the name. I didn't know if you would know too much about him, because I personally I didn't until the Senior Bowl. So
right.
So I'm looking at somebody later on. He kind of came out of nowhere, because again the first day he was invisible, and not in a good way. Like, he was visible, but he didn't play well.
Right.
But he reminds me, because I was there last year and I saw the UNC cornerback that former Ram Dre Bly absolutely loves, MJ Stewart. I had a chance to speak with him. I thought he did a great job in the one-on-ones, and obviously, through practice. He's kind of like the MJ Stewart of the Senior Bowl. Stewart, I believe, went in the 3rd round, and his stock rose. I think the Senior Bowl helped him. I think Corey Ballantyne kind of got his name out there. I know when I went back to watch the live coverage, or that wasn't actually live on NFL Network after I just watched it in person, I saw some things that Charles Davis pointed out, and Daniel Jeremiah, and they did mention him. So, getting some exposure, that's why you got to go to those things. Another guy last year from Dubuque, Michael Joseph, I had a chance to speak with him. He's a D3 guy. So, those D3, D2 guys, if you get a invite to the Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine Game, you have to go. I mean, it's not even negotiable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely seen the name. I'm sure I'll watch some stuff on him, but yeah, know the name.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't even know where Washburn is.
I don't. Why are you putting me on the spot?
Well, I kept seeing it, and it's just funny you brought him up because I was always constantly seeing his name, and it was like engraved in my mind. But like for whatever reason, I just never took the time to like go look into him. And I just keep seeing Washburn, and I'm gonna have to figure out where that is now.
Yeah, it's a must. I mean, Division II kid. Come on now.
Right, but I guess it's my turn now.
It is your turn.
If we're, but this is another O-line guy that I like, who I think is really underrated. John Baker, the center out of Boston College. Someone who I think can play guard or center. I think he probably is more of a center by nature, but I think he could play either. He's one of those guys like Jake that you were saying earlier is just kind of one of those just like gritty offensive linemen. He has no issue going head to head with the toughest of defensive linemen. I mean, he super aggressive, super violent. I think, I'm pretty sure, I couldn't tell you the exact numbers. I'm pretty sure that Boston College actually had collectively as an O-line some of the best numbers in college football this past season. I read that somewhere. I couldn't tell you what the numbers were, but I think I have him graded as going in the fourth round, and I'd like to see the Rams, if they decide to get depth at offensive line, which I think they should, take him.
I just want to interrupt this broadcast with the news that Washburn University is located in Topeka, Kansas.
Wow. Another Kansas. Jake, I feel like subconsciously you knew this.
No.
You've got your KU, Kansas State, and now Washburn.
No, I guess I don't have a Wichita State. I promise they don't have a football team. So,
can anybody guess what their mascot is? This is actually really cool.
I knew
is it a
this.
bee?
They're the Ichabods.
Yeah, the Ichabods.
Oh.
Yeah.
It honors the school's early benefactor, Ichabod Washburn.
Oh my God! Of course.
Well,
it's
the more
named
you
after
know.
Somebody. Yeah. So I do think, like you said, I think the Rams are absolutely going to have to beef up their offensive line. So, I definitely agree with you. Pretty much any name that you say at this point, offensive line, I'm going to agree. Because, I think the Rams have kind of, I know they did last year. I know they got, guys like Noteboom. I know they got Brian Allen, who was my least favorite center in the draft. I know they got, Jamil Demby from Maine. All the guys that are at the Senior Bowl. I get that. But they need to come back from the fact that over the years, when they could have had that, Cody Whitehair, again from Kansas State. Now I'm Kansas biased, apparently. But, Cody Whitehair, or, they could have had, somebody like that, Travis Frederick. And they passed on a center when they needed one. And now they put a Band-Aid on it with John Sullivan. And then they drafted Brian Allen, who, again, I'm sorry, but I think he's more of just a, it's not really trying to trash the guy, but he is what he is. I just feel like he's a spot starter. I feel like you're going to need somebody there. I guess if you want to move on, I have my last guy, and that's center. And it's going to be Elgton Jenkins from Mississippi State. I watched this guy absolutely maul people one-on-one. He's probably the best center in this class, I would say. I don't know about you guys. I would probably say he's the best center.
Yeah, unless you put Risner at center.
Yeah, then you're talking, because that would be interesting. But I like Jenkins. I think he moves fairly well. Obviously, he's from the Senior Bowl, so now again I'm sounding like biased, but no, I like him a lot. I think Mississippi State obviously reaped the benefits with him, and they had another guy there whose name escapes me. But like Mississippi State had a really good offensive line, and now I'm forgetting who it was.
Was it Darrell Williams?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was Darrell Williams. I like the size of Jenkins. I mean, he's 6'4", 313. Although there's another guy the Rams, I think, signed to a futures deal. Not futures, but off-season deal, Anthony McMeans, who was under 300. And people were saying how he can't make it in the NFL because he's not 300 pounds. And I just disagree with that sentiment. I mean, 300 pounds helps. You'd like to see your guy over 300 pounds, but there are good offensive linemen that are 300 pounds. So I don't really understand that. But like I said, 313, he's got good size. I think he's got good hand placement. Once he gets a hold of somebody, I mean, I think they're done. Personally, he's somebody that instantly plugs up what I think is a hole, regardless if you have John Sullivan or Brian Allen. Very intelligent, and that's one of the reasons why somebody like John Sullivan, obviously, who was really good in his career and has now gone downhill. He's just not quick enough for the NFL game, and he's getting blown up consistently at this point in his career. He's there because of how sophisticated he is and how knowledgeable he is of this, of the game. Center's a huge position, especially when you have a young quarterback. So I get that, but I think Elgton Jenkins could step in right in there and, be able to replace him and do it well. Now, where would I say he's going to fall? I mean, he could go first round. I think he's the best center in the class, but I'd probably say I'll say second round. I know center, really, you have to be dominant in order to go in the first. And while he's the best center, I don't think he's an absolute dominant center. I do think there are some flaws to his game, but there are flaws to everybody's game in this draft class. I don't think he is physical enough. I don't think he, he doesn't have a mean streak. We'll still just say that. I don't think he's as aggressive as somebody like a Perschbacher or obviously, the guy we mentioned earlier, Reisner. I don't think he has that mean streak. I gotta give a shout out. I didn't mention him, but Ben Powers made himself a lot of money at the Senior Bowl, guard out of Oklahoma. I thought he was better than Drew Samia, but yeah, that would just be my take. I think, really the one thing he's lacking is that he just doesn't finish. He's not extremely aggressive, but they don't get through. He just doesn't finish the play, which is something I would like to see.
Yeah. I honestly, I haven't, he's another guy that I've been meaning to look into, but all the stuff that I've seen, he's great at his round 2.
And now, I guess we're down to the last one. Who's your last player?
Well, it's another offensive lineman. Imagine that. It's a guy who you probably actually saw in person, Chuma Edoga, the tackle out of USC.
Yes, I did.
Another guy who I had not heard of before the Senior Bowl, but was extremely impressed. I mean, I don't think there was really anyone who got by him from what I saw. I wasn't there, but he's someone who I think, as far as his best asset is, I think, just his natural talent. He's got great length, great arm extension. I think it's really hard for anybody to beat him coming off the edge. He doesn't seem to get knocked over easily, and he seems to have quick hands. But from what I'm seeing, I would say he's probably a 3rd-round pick, maybe 4th-round pick. I think he's probably a guy that would need to be developed more before he starts. But I think the Rams could use him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's somebody whose name I did know. I actually people of the podcast also know, I'm also a fan of USC. So I mean, I lean Kansas for everything, but USC would be my second for football. I didn't see what I saw. I didn't see what at USC what I saw at the Senior Bowl. I saw a guy that had worked on clearly his mechanical flaws, technique. Can he get overwhelmed at times? Speed rushers, like elite speed rushers, absolutely. But I thought he did a really nice job at the Senior Bowl. Stood out. Him and the Elon offensive tackle, Oli Udoh, who kind of blew up at the East-West Shrine game. He also stood out as well. He's got great length, but you know what's funny about this, Alexis? We were just talking about how people, he's under 300 pounds. Well, Udoh's under 300 pounds, and I think it almost helps him. Now, at the same time, he doesn't anchor as well as some of the other guys, but I feel like because of, his weight, the fact that he's not really, really bulky like a Damian Mama that's in the AAF. He's a perfect example. Dude was like 350, and he came from USC. But, he's smart, he's patient, and I just think he's somebody that's athletic enough to, maintain as a pass protector. And I think he's going to get to the second level, and he's going to help you, in the run game. So, I think he's got some good technique. He got better. You could tell he's worked on it, and that speaks to me. I think that's a big thing when you can see a guy that gets better, as soon as he goes to the Senior Bowl and you see the film beforehand or you watch the games and then you see things that he corrected at the Senior Bowl, and it shows. So I'm glad that you brought him up because he's another guy at the Senior Bowl that I really liked. But, there's so many guys that we could list. We only could list 10. I know you and I had a hard time. Alex apparently didn't. But yeah, I thought that was a good list by you. I'm glad that I was able to get my list out there. I'm definitely passionate about everyone that I'm going to bring up on the podcast because really what it comes down to is that there are over 500, 600 prospects. I'm only going to scout 350 max, maybe 400. I'm not going to tell you every single prospect because you don't want to know every single prospect. You want to know the guys that make sense for the Rams. You want to know the guys that I like, all that. So that's really what I'm going to bring up. And
I really like Joey Bosa. I think he's going to be a good football player.
You mean Nick Bosa?
Yeah. That's a Nick Bosa or is it Joey?
You said Joey.
I thought you were just being a moron.
I've been doing that recently. I've been saying Joey.
I thought you did it on purpose, honestly.
I did too.
Hey, they're the same guy. They're going to be just as good as each other. So.
Yeah. That's it. What you guys have anything else to add?
I'll be better next time. Prepared wise, I'll be better.
Yeah, I thought this was awesome. We've gone over the 2:10 mark, so 2 hours and 10 minutes. We had some technical difficulties, but I thought we hung in there, and it's been a good podcast. And as long as you guys are down, I will be doing this live. I'd say probably let's do 3 to 5 prospects. We'll cut it down a little bit. We won't do over 2 hours every time, but just kind of get you guys acclimated to the rest of the draft. We'll have our draft profiles online. We'll have mock drafts. We're really excited to have Alexis join us, and I think it's going to be a really fun off season. You guys probably have seen my my little setup, so I will be doing videos as well. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to have something out tomorrow. Kind of what some of the guys I talked about today, but a little bit more in depth tomorrow for the website.
And hopefully in about a month when Clemson has their pro day, hopefully I get to go to that. I think there's a chance I'll be able to get a credential and go.
I feel like that's like your dream.
Yes. Yes, I've tried out for the team twice, and I've interviewed. I'm trying to work for them, but that's a different.
Weren't you going to be the kicker?
I'm going to be the head coach there,
No,
Jake.
No, I mean, like, you tried out to be their kicker, right?
I've tried out for kicker and quarterback.
Why not?
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, hey, J.J. Watt was he was a walk-on.
He was.
We'll save this for another day, this conversation, but
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a very long podcast. This has to be the record for the longest Downtown Rams podcast in history.
Hey, believe it or not, it's not.
Isn't the longest one like 3 hours?
How'd you know?
Because I listened, and I think one time it's like 3 hours.
It cut off. we ran out of time.
You need a 24-hour marathon podcast.
Could you imagine?
You don't want to hear me talk for 24 hours about football. I'll end up talking about the Arena League. I mean, the Albany Empire.
American Alliance.
Hey, I love that league. I do want to give a shout out to that because I'm a San Diego Fleet fan, but what I looked at is I just like the league as a whole. I think as long as you like any team other than the Atlanta Legends, I think you have something to cheer for. I mean,
what's wrong with the Legends?
They got obliterated.
Well, yeah, my Memphis Express, the team that I claimed allegiance to, looked terrible today. And after drafting Gary Gilbert in our league and a whole bunch of Jalen Marshall in the Apollos defense, after drafting a whole bunch of Apollos, it's going to be hard not cheering for them. And since I go to Clemson and Atlanta's only 2 hours away, I thought the Legends would be my second team. So I'm not doing too good with my picks right now.
I claimed allegiance to Memphis as well, so I was pretty disappointed today.
I mean, Hackenberg's going to Hackenberg. I would start Mettenberger. I think he's the best quarterback on that team. I saw Brandon Silvers at the Senior Bowl, and I don't see it. So I mean, you have Zach Stacy, former Ram. You have former Ram Terrence McGee. There's some guys there. I mean, I think they have a decent group of guys. They have Channing Stribling from Michigan, so I like their team. It's just really their quarterback. Once you get that figured out, you're good. But the Atlanta Legends, it's like Aaron Murray came in after Matt Sims started, and he did nothing, and they lost 40-6. So it's as long as you're not an Atlanta fan, I think you have a lot to be happy for, I guess.
We'll see. I'm not gonna get my hopes up yet.
And I'm pretty sure the game's going on right now, but I haven't watched a second of it because we've been recording this podcast. So that is gonna do it. It's been a fun one for Jake Ellenbogen. She's Alexis Kraft, and he is Alex Kelly. We'll be back next week for, at least if you guys want to come back, you are very welcome, for another draft podcast. During the week, we'll be doing Ram stuff as well. I'll have a podcast, likely with Joe Curley. So we'll do that. So we'll have our Rams news, free agency, and then we'll have our draft stuff on the weekend. So you
gotta
guys
have that Super Bowl. Gotta have a Super Bowl experience one, man. I gotta talk all about it.
Oh yeah, we do have to do that. So we'll
that could be a short one too. That could be a short me, you, ask me questions, ask me who I saw, sat by, what I did before the game, after the game, whatnot.
All right. Well, we'll do that at some point. But thanks again, guys, for tuning in. This has been the Downtown Rams podcast, and it's been episode 155. And we appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.